Welcome everyone to another CTC Software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and today we are going to continue the HIVE CMS Admin Learning Series, focusing today on working with shared saved searches. We've talked about saved searches before in the user series, and hopefully you've had a chance to see that. Today we're talking about sharing those saved searches with the company as a whole. So we'll review a little bit of the actual saving of searches as well, because, well, we have to do that. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. Saved searches are really key. They really help to far more efficiently find the same content or run the same search repeatedly. And we all probably are building up some of our own efficiencies, and maybe we've seen some efficiencies from some of our team members or some of our end users. And we want to take that and share those efficiency gains with the rest of the entire team, or the respective part of that team, the subset, or that sub-discipline, or that working practice group, or whatever you want to call it. So in this webinar, I'm going to dig deep into the advanced concepts of sharing saved searches and working with shared saved searches, so you can very easily distribute these known good searches to everyone. We're going to cover a couple of key topics. We're going to establish some naming conventions for these shared saved searches, talk a little bit about making sure that it's clear for your team. We're going to create a couple of new shared saved searches and talk about some of the details behind what we need to know. We are going to update some existing saved searches and modify their settings and potentially rename them to align them with naming conventions we might want to use. And then we're also going to talk very specifically, probably throughout a lot of this, in managing the distribution, who actually sees these shared saved searches. Okay, we're going to cover all that. Now, as always, these webinars are, of course, recorded, and when you're here live, you get to ask questions. That said, I always look at the questions window while we're going through these webinars live, and if you have questions, I encourage you to throw them in there directly. And I'll try to answer them live while we're going through a topic. And we also, of course, have a huge Q&A session at the end, where we'll talk more in detail about any questions you have about any of these specific topics. But since I'm not big on death by PowerPoint, I'm going to go in live and start showing you some of this directly in the HIVE CMS. And pretty much everything we're going to do today happens directly in the CMS itself. So first off, let's have a little discussion about naming conventions for saved searches in general. Okay, as the BIM management team, as those helping to establish and configure HIVE for the rest of our team, we should be really consistent with naming conventions. And we've talked about this before. If I go into my HIVE CMS and I go take a look at my libraries, it's pretty obvious where these particular libraries belong, right? The AutoCAD content is owned by me. The Dynamo content owned by me, right? The shared library that I'm actually subscribed to here is owned by the International Masonry Institute. I'm constantly putting parentheses and indicating who owns something. If I have custom content for some other reason from a specific customer or whatever, I'll put that into its own library potentially if it's their specialized content, and name it accordingly. But you'll notice that I'm pretty consistent with that throughout, all of my libraries. It's important with group naming that you do something similar. We talked about using, not group naming, tag naming, with these tag names here of prefixing or suffixing with specific customers. I use discipline-specific prefix or category-specific prefixes so that it groups things together nicely so users can find what they're looking for. I kind of thought about my naming conventions, and while I don't 100% follow it, I generally do follow my little naming convention schemes here. You're going to want to make sure that you establish a naming convention also for yourself for saved searches. Now, let's recap real quick where you see these saved searches. End users can access them very easily by dropping down the saved search list here, just to the left of the search string bar right there. And you can see I've got some searches inside of here. Now, some of these are named more consistently than others. I do need to go through my library of saved searches here and name them a bit better. But the vast majority of mine are actually shared saved searches. And you can tell most of these are shared because a little icon right there of the building with the people. These are all shared. And this is what we're going to be creating today. This one here, CTC railings, Not shared. This is my own personal saved search that only I can see, unless, of course, I decide to share it later, and we'll talk about that as we go through. But these naming conventions are important, both for grouping these together as well as for identifying what the expectation of that shared saved search is, what the outcome is. In this case, it's CTC doors that are swinging. And if I run this shared saved search, it runs a search for everything that is CTC Revit content in this case. I didn't indicate that with my naming convention, but most of my shared searches are Revit-based. If you're using AutoCAD or Revit, you might want to include here some indication of which library it's going to. CTC Revit doors swing or something like that. And I don't have any AutoCAD doors, so it's pretty obvious for my team. It also is using the tag of doors swing, that indicated by that right there. It's using a swing tag on it, and it's looking at a specific category, again, indicating the category name right there. And then in my case, I've also set the only Revit content. So it's looking for everything in my library with this tag on it. That's Revit content, that's doors specifically. All of that was set by my single saved search. And in my case, shared with a bunch of people on my team. But we're talking here naming conventions, and I was able to very clearly, in my case, because of how I've set my environment up, I know what this means. CTC doors would be all CTC doors, not just swinging doors, so it removes that particular filter there, that particular tag. Highly rated doors looks for doors that have a rating above a certain value. Again, it's pretty similar to this, but then it goes into the advanced filters. We talked about those a little while back in some of the user learning series, how to use advanced filters. I have some doors that are specific to a customer. So I have some ICS doors that are not CTC doors. They'll look someplace else. I have some discipline-specific save searches here for my MEP teams and specific kinds of objects. So if I was to go and search something like MEP mechanical, I can pretty well assume that it's going to pull up all the mechanical objects in the MEP collection of content that I have. It looks, in this case, at a specialized library. It looks for all of the Revit categories that relate to the mechanical side, and it's, again, returning back usually just Revit content. Maybe I'll update this in a minute here so I can replace that so that it only does give me back Revit content in case there's any AutoCAD stuff in this mix. But it finds me that stuff because of these searches, and again, I'm able to identify what this is intending to retrieve by its name, because this is all end users are going to get, is this name right here. So you got to make sure you name it very, very cleanly. Now, they also can view saved searches here from the Home tab. When I go into saved searches, I can see those exact same things here, and I'll see, what those individual shared save searches or my own save searches are. But it's the same list as this list right here. It's identical. Okay. So the name is super important. That naming convention here is really key to making sure people can identify what it is they're about to grab. So let's talk about building a brand new shared search, saved search. So back here in the HIVE CMS, we're going to create a new search completely from scratch. So let's completely clear our filters out and come up with something here. Let's say what I wanted was something relating to interior walls. I don't think I have one like that yet. I have CTC walls, but I don't have interior walls. So let's say I search for interior or INT right there, because I think that's part of my naming convention. I'm going to focus on my corporate Revit library in this case. This works for any library. I'm talking Revit in today's filters, but you could just as easily do this for AutoCAD or standards or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and tell it the Revit category that I want for this, because I want this to be interior walls. So I'm going to do basic walls. I'm going to ignore stacked walls in my case. And I only want Revit content back. So let's apply this search and see what we get. Walls, interior, branded throughout this entire area. Looks like there's some exterior ones, probably because in their properties, they're classified as interior in the definition of these, but the name of these other ones will float them to the surface anyway. But I'm finding all those interior walls. It took me just a few seconds to build this up, but since I do this very, very regularly, I want to save this. And to save a search, you simply hit the Save Search button up here, And that will bring up the ability to create either a new shared saved search or a new search, or I can overwrite an existing search if I wanted to update its definition through here as well. In this case, I want to build a brand new one. Now, what I want to do is make sure that I'm following a similar naming convention. So I'm going to cheat for a minute here and just take a look. Yeah, CTC walls, and you'll notice that if I have like CTC doors, and then I have some definition here like swing, I've put that in parentheses. So it keeps things grouped nicely together. So since we're talking a little bit about naming conventions, let's follow that. I'm going to put CTC walls, and then in parentheses, I'm going to put interior or int. So I'm going to say new. I'm going to put in CTC walls, if I could spell, and then int. Or I might even spell it out, interior, just so that users can see that specifically. I like to give myself a bit more of a description, so while I'm looking at this later, I can see more about what this is. I like to put in things like library is CTC Revit or something like that, or I probably would call up the actual name Revit content CTC, and I'll put that kind of in the right format there, and I'll get rid of this capital letter here, and then, you know, oh, I hit enter, and I didn't mean to hit enter. Well, it saved it. It saved my search. So there it is. It's now in my list here, and I've got this CTC walls interior, and I may want to go back and edit that. I might want to go modify how that thing was configured. So let's talk about editing shared searches or searches in general, because I just created a search and I made a mistake. I hit enter too early and I got out of that edit dialog. How do I go back and modify that? So how do we edit shared saved searches? Well, you can edit all of your saved searches right through here. My saved searches and shared saved searches will show up here as well. Now, if you're a manager of the shared searches, you'll have the ability to edit them. If you are not a manager of those searches, then you'll be able to modify maybe like your own, but these ones up here, when I click on them, they wouldn't give me edit if I didn't own them, right? These ones I would always be able to edit because I do own them, but these being shared, if I wasn't a manager, I wouldn't be able to actually edit them. I'd be able to run them, but I wouldn't be able to edit them. So I'm going to go find the one that I had just made here. Let's just see, where was it? CTC walls int was what it was called. It took it a second to populate there, but I think it's up now. CTC walls, why am I not seeing it? Let's filter this. Interior, there we go, CTC walls interior, this one. I have walls interior, but CTC walls interior is the one that I intend to share with my firm. So I'm going to click on this one. It's my own personal right now. You can tell it's mine because it doesn't have a little shared icon, and I'm going to edit it. Now, this lets me do things like updating the name. I could update the description and put that description that I intended to have here back in it, which I like to do personally, so I know more about what these are for. But I can also typically turn this into a shared search, sharing it with my organization. In this case, I can't because I need to basically re-save it. So normally if this was already shared, I'd have a list. Let me give an example. Walls interior, if I edit this guy, this is already shared with my organization. I can't toggle this after the fact unless I make a brand new one. So I need to go in here and I can change the groups on this once I've edited it if it's already shared. If it's not shared, I'm going to have to resave this. I'm going to have to execute it and then resave it as my shared save search. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this guy and just quickly change the name to mine, so I know it's me real quick, and then I'll be able to use this name again and make it shared with the organization. So save that real quick. Let's execute this saved search. It's going to rerun it. It's going to give me all the exact same properties. I can make sure it's doing what I want, and I'm going to resave this as a brand new shared save search. I'm going to use the same name, probably give it a good description, check the box to share it with my organization. This is how I make sure that it's shared, and I only get this if I'm a manager of these libraries or an admin within the HIVE CMS. Then I can create these shared save searches. I'm going to select which user groups in my firm can access this. And so this is where we're going to talk about managing the shared search visibility. This is key. This determines now who can see this shared search. Now, these groups come from your admin portal. You can create user groups there. These are the exact same user groups that we use for library rights. They're the same user groups that we can use for giving access to CTC's cloud shared licensing. They're all the same groups. So you can define these groups once and very easily share them amongst a bunch of different uses. In this case, with these walls searches, I want to make sure that everybody who's in the group, in my architecture group, everyone in my architecture team can find this. I probably don't need my electrical, mechanical, and structural teams able to see this particular shared search because this is interior walls. This is for interior architecture. Anything that's structural, I'll probably have a different brand on that, so it's not an interior wall, right? So I can be very surgical about who gets this. Now, if you don't have discipline-specific, needs in your firm, maybe you've got practice groups. Maybe you've got a practice group for healthcare. Maybe you've got practice groups for hospitality, and those sometimes use different styles of elements and different collections of objects. So you might have practice group specific groups that you've made if you're all architecture and you don't need to have, say, electrical, mechanical, structural. Or maybe you don't need to differentiate that at all, and you all work on the same kinds of projects. I have, in this case, a role set for everyone in my firm. Literally, it's everybody. This is one of the very first groups that we make. I can use this group to distribute this particular shared search out to everyone, if that's appropriate. I'll show an example of where I did that earlier. In this case, I'm going to make sure that my architecture team can see this particular shared saved search. So I'm going to go ahead and select the architecture team. Again, I would normally put a description in here. For today's purposes, I am just going to save this, and it's going to build me a shared saved search now. So up here, there's my personal one, CTC Walls Interior with my initials on it, but then there's the one that I just made, CTC Walls Interior, that is shared with everybody. And when I run that, anybody who's in that discipline architecture team will be able to see that search, run it, and get the exact same results that I'm getting. Interior, the Revit content, basic walls, right? Only Revit content, giving me all the filters that I need. Now, I like to manage my shared searches a bit more. I'll go back into my shared saved searches here, and let me just refresh this list real quick here because we've got that new CTC Walls Interior. There's the old one that's sitting there that probably is very similar to this, and there's this CTC Walls Interior for me. And what I'm going to do is actually take these two that are now redundant, and I'm going to clean them up. So my own personal one that I know that I'm not going to use anymore, since this is really the one that everybody should be using, I'm going to delete that shared or that saved search, my own personal saved search. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. This Walls Interior one, that again, probably redundant. Let's just go find out. If I go run this search, it's int, CTC content, Revit content, basic walls. In this case, a specific Revit version at play. Now, I don't really want that Revit version in there anymore. And so this is kind of an outdated shared search. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to delete it and just keep this one here that has a proper naming convention on it that kind of follows my new naming convention. That'll get rid of this guy out of the list, and it's a bit more clear then. So I actually kind of created a duplicate shared save search, same kind of rules, but I'm going to go back and just make sure that I'm giving my team what they need. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that one there. Now I'm going to clear my filter out. I want to show you one where I do share my search with the entire firm, because I went in here and took my CTC Walls Interior, and this was shared with just my architecture discipline. Well, with the templates for the entire company, I'm going to edit this particular search, and you'll notice that this is given to everyone, and unnecessarily I also threw the BIM managers in here. That doesn't need to be there because everyone in my firm is everyone in my firm. It includes everybody. So I could actually clean this up just a little bit and remove that just because it's not necessary. It's redundant. Everyone's already in the everyone group. And so I can save that, and now my templates for the company are there. Now, one of the reasons why I was mentioning earlier about adding that description is that I only can tell what the rules are about this by actually executing it, having it run, and do the search. So sometimes my description, very frequently my description will call out, again, what the library is, what the search string is, what filters are set, if it's Revit only or AutoCAD only or whatever that might be, so that just by glancing at this, I can go in there and look and go, oh yeah, that's what the rules are, and I've described that for myself. This dialog is designed to be very simplistic so that you can understand what the name is, that it's shared, and who it's shared with. That's kind of the purpose of this management. And if you wanted to make changes to it, you run it, you make changes to it, and you can overwrite a previous one. So what would that look like if I was actually going to fix a saved search? Let's fix one. I'm going to take the CTC walls and execute this one because I remember when I ran this, it looked for everything that's Revit content, but it wasn't limiting down my results to only Revit content. So there's a potential that, depending on what might be coming in here, might be AutoCAD based or DWGs, document files or PDFs, and sometimes that'll creep into your searches if you are filtering for Revit stuff, but you didn't check only Revit content. And so I like to have this checked when I know that what I want to get back truly is just Revit. And so I'm going to resave this search again. So it's looking for everything in this library. It was originally looking just for basic walls. I'm now adding on only Revit content, and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to use this top one here to overwrite. So I'm managing an existing shared search here, and I'm going to overwrite the one that is CTC walls. So this is all walls, different than my interior one, which was actually having a search string for interior there. Both of them are looking at the same library. They're both filtering for basic walls. One's just giving it a bit more narrowed down result. And so I'm overwriting it. I don't have to worry about anything else down here. It's all irrelevant because it's not defining a new one. It's directly replacing the rule set for this, keeping the same shared groups. Everything's identical. All it's going to do is replace the rule set for it. So I can OK that. And it's now going to, next time I run that, it's going to do the right thing for me. So if I run, say, CTC railings, it runs a search for railings. And if I come back and rerun CTC walls, it's everything in that library. It's replaced this setting, so it's now using the right thing, and it's giving me the basic walls, right? But this is now available to my team. It's shared with my team. This is available to my team. It's shared with them. So once again, final thing here, I can go back to my saved searches and those that are shared with me that I can edit, and I can start to see things like walls interior. I can edit this, know who that one's going to. I can see CTC walls, edit that one. That's going to everyone because my structural team and, well, everyone can access that. Even my mechanical teams could create little mechanical divisions in their rooms if they needed to using my walls and filter them down. That's just a good starting point for them. All right, that is pretty much everything about saved searches. We went a little deeper about direct saved searching in the user-based saved searches, and here we're talking more specifically about the sharing of this. So again, when this is edited, I can decide who gets access to these. Like my mechanical team can access my MEP pipes shared saved search here. That's available to them. All right. So thank you, and we do look forward to seeing you in future CTC webinars, and we'll catch you all later. Have a fantastic day.